I'm Diane Brigant, a sister of St. Agnes from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and I'm also the Carol Stuhlmuller Professor Emerita of Old Testament Studies at the Catholic Theological Union in Chicago. I'd like to share with you some reflections, biblical reflections, that show that the Holy Father's document, Laudato Si, is clearly rooted in some of our biblical tradition. Three themes that the Holy Father speaks about, particularly, I'd like to look at. One of them is what he calls radical or misguided anthropocentrism. The second one is interconnectedness. And the third one is interdependence. He uses an adjective when he speaks about anthropocentrism, which comes from two Greek words, anthropos meaning human, and centrism, which means centered, human-centered. In a certain way, anthropocentrism is something that is so fundamental to us because we are human beings. And it means that, the word means that we look at and understand everything from a human point of view. Nobody really knows what the horses are thinking, not even the horse whisperer. He may know a little bit, but he doesn't really know what the horses are saying or thinking. So the issue of anthropocentrism is not a problem. The issue is, he has an adjective, the Holy Father does, before it whenever he uses it. The issue is misguided anthropocentrism, radical anthropocentrism, which means not only that everything is viewed from a human point of view, but everything is valued from a human point of view. If you remember, several years ago, there was something in the news that said that the bumblebees were going extinct. And one might think, who cares? And my answer to that is everybody should care, because the bumblebee pollinates. No pollination, no corn. No corn, we don't eat. So we need the bumblebee. So the value of the bumblebee is really found in the whole ecosystem. But radical anthropocentrism would say, I don't want to be stung, so let's get rid of them. We did that in Yellowstone National Park as well. There were too many coyotes, and so we got rid of the coyotes. Or was it wolves? I think it was wolves. We got rid of the wolves, and then the elk population expanded. Then were there too many elk? So in our attempt to make the universe or to make our earth more compatible for us, sometimes we interfere in the ecosystem. Those are just examples of radical anthropocentrism. Now, what has that got to do with the biblical tradition? I want to suggest we look for a moment at the book of Job. Now, most people know something about Job, if it's only the little expression, the patience of Job. The book of Job has got 42 chapters. Job is patient in the first 2 chapters and the last 10 verses of chapter 42. From chapter 3 up to that point at the end, chapter 42, he's not patient. He is a man who shakes his fist at heaven. He is a man who says, I'm innocent, you, God, are guilty of my suffering. So what do we know about the book of Job? What's the real message in the book of Job? In the book of Job, we have the question of retribution. And retribution means acts have consequences. A good action has a good consequence. A bad action or an evil action has an evil consequence. How do we know that? And the answer is experience. So really, we know if it's a good action by the consequence, not simply because mother said, eat your vegetables, you'll like it. All right? So we have, how do we know we don't like it? We ate them and we found out we didn't like it. Therefore, that's something I don't want. Now, we learn this from experience. There's another adage that many people say, experience is the best teacher. I'm not quite sure that's adequate. I would say experience is the only teacher. Anything we know from experience, either our own or somebody else's. An example of that. I am told that when I was a child, I was fascinated by fire. Well, fire's fascinating. It dances. It's got color, and it dances. And I'm told I wanted to grab it. Now, I could be told by my parents, and I must have been, I don't remember, but I must have been. I've been told you can't catch fire with your hands. They probably didn't use those words, but that's what they're saying. You can't catch fire with your hands. How do they know that? Well, somebody told them. And how did that person know it? Well, somebody told them. So it's either our experience or somebody else's. All of the ologies, biology, sociology, theology, all of the ologies, really, anthropology, are a collection of insights that somebody discovered from experience. It's a collection. That's what experimentation is, from experience. Now, that's very important for the book of Job, for our understanding of the book of Job. So what is the story of the book of Job? A man was a righteous man. He did the right thing. So when you do the right thing, what you do is expect to enjoy either a reward or happiness or satisfaction or something positive. All right? In Job's situation, we the readers know he was a righteous man. It says that at the beginning of the book. He was a righteous man. He feared God and stayed away from evil. And that's why he was rich. At least that's how they understood retribution, as we do as well. We still understand retribution in that way. An example of that is, who has not heard or said, what did I do to deserve this? So evidently, they feel they've been acting appropriately, and they're not happy. So what did I do to deserve this? There's a connection between act and consequence. Or if we are religious, sometimes we say, why did God do this to me? We never say, or seldom say, I did it to myself. But sometimes we do. But usually the phrase is either, what did I do to deserve this? Or why has God done this? Why has God given me cancer? Why has God taken my child? All that we still operate out of retribution. It's the basis of our legal system. So I'm not finding fault with it. It's a way we understand the relationship between act and consequence. It's important to understand the theory of retribution to understand the book of Job. So the whole first 2 chapters is an attempt to show he's a righteous man. He did not deserve having lost his children, having lost his servants, having lost all of his property, and then having somehow or other been stricken physically. Many pictures show him filled with boils, some kind of physical ailment. What did Job do to deserve that? Now, the only people who know that, the answer to that, is God and the readers. We know what happened. We are spectators. Nobody in the story knew that. Job didn't know that. All right? The visitors didn't know that. Well, the Satan did. And it's not Satan. It's not the devil. It's the Satan, a prosecuting attorney. Don't forget, the Satan is up with God in the courts of heaven. So in a certain sense, it's a kind of ploy so God doesn't look so bad. But God looks bad in that story. So Job lived a righteous life. And the Satan said initially, take away everything he has, and he will curse you to your face. So God took away everything, or at least God allowed Satan to take away everything, and Job did not curse. So after a whole set of questions. And then there's another set of, not of questions, but of sufferings. There's another suffering where he's physically stricken, and still he did not curse. That's what we find in the first 2 chapters. And the chapter ends with 3 visitors coming to mourn with him. So he sits in silence. In the ancient world, that's a custom. You come to sympathize with somebody, you don't say anything. The one who breaks the silence is the major mourner, the one who's really suffering. And that's what happens in chapter 3. So in chapter 3, if you read it carefully, there's one passage in there that's very important. He curses the day of his birth. Now, what does that mean? In the ancient world, there is a creation story, many creation stories, that really say the forces of good are in battle with the forces of evil. That's a common theme. Once again, we still operate under that. We believe the forces of good are in battle with the forces of evil. You can call the forces of evil temptation or the Satan, devil, however you want to understand that. But we are constantly battling. Paul says, sometimes I do what I don't want to do, and sometimes what I want to do, I don't do. So within ourselves, we struggle the forces of good and the forces of evil. So that's what this story is about, or at least that's what we find here in the narrative. Good suffering in battle with evil. So when Job curses the day of his birth, that's also a cosmic concept, because the forces of good, and the forces of evil were at battle, and out of that the forces of good won. Sometimes the forces of good are called light. Sometimes the forces of evil are called darkness. Again, same theme that we find running throughout the Bible, both testaments. And darkness always loses, ultimately loses. There's a passage in a movie recently, and the young hero of the story has a wonderful phrase. I wonder if he realizes how eschatological it was. The phrase is, all things will work out in the end. If they haven't yet worked out, it's not the end. Now you see the humor in that, but that's good eschatology. And we find that, again, in what I'm talking about in the book of Job. Now, with that kind of a background, when Job curses the day, and he goes on and says, let that day be night, he's asking for the overturn of, or the reversal of creation. He's asking that day is conquered by night. He's asking that the forces of good are conquered by the forces of evil. He's asking that God, who represents the forces of good, who is the forces of good, and is frequently characterized as light, is conquered by evil. In the ancient world, that's probably as close to blasphemy as you can get without blaspheming. Now, we read that, and we don't think that way, because it's a different culture. But with that kind of background, realize this man is not patient. This man does not simply take it. He may have in the beginning, as many of us, something happens and we are courageous for a while. Not always for a long time, but for a while. Human limitation. So Job is saying, I am not responsible for this suffering. God is. I am not guilty. God is. God has stricken me, and I am innocent. And then 3 visitors come. Some people call them friends. I always think, who needs friends like this? What do they keep saying? They are operating out of the theory of retribution, as is Job. Job is saying, I'm a righteous man, I should not be suffering. There's something askew here. And they are saying, from the theory of retribution, looking at the consequences, you're suffering, you must have done something to deserve it. So from Job speaks in chapter 3, from chapter 4 until chapter 38, this is the conversation between Job and his visitors. He is insisting on his innocence. The only place he admits guilt, he said, I have sinned, but not this badly. I don't deserve this. He insisted. He never lets go of it. And they are insisting God does not act that way. So, same struggle that many of us recognize or experience in this world. At the end of this conversation, or this dialogue, or this fight, he finally says to God, come to earth and explain yourself. Now, that takes gall. That is what the Jews would refer to as chutzpah. So that's what he demands. Again, in the thinking of the ancient world, God should have struck him dead, but he doesn't. And what does God do? He comes to Job and says to him, Gird your loins like a man. Now in Hebrew there are 4 words that we translate man. What is Adam? That's the first one and the generic term. One is Enosh, which means limited human being. Again, limited is not a moral characterization. So we've got Adam, Enosh. Another one is Gibber. Gibber means strong man, just as Enosh means weak or limited man. And the fourth one is Ish, which means man in relationship to another, usually a woman, and that word is frequently translated husband. So we've got Adam, we've got weak man, and we have Gibber. That's the word that's used. And that word is sometimes translated warrior. Gird yourself like a warrior. Because, again, in translation, you don't get this. But the implication is, I'm going to take you on. You took me on, I'm going to take you on. So get ready for a fight. And what does God do? He gives no answers. Job keeps saying, why? Why? The real suffering of Job is not that he suffers, not that he has lost his position, his reputation, his goods, even his family. That's not the real issue is he doesn't know why. Why have you done this to me? So Job asks questions. Job demands answers. And finally, as I said, says to God, come down and explain yourself. He demands answers. And what does God do? He gives him no answer, not one. Instead, as we begin in chapter 38, there are 2 lists of questions. Questions, first of all, about the universe. And the second set of questions about the animals on earth. So questions about the heavens and the earth. And what are the questions? Where were you when I created the heavens? Do you know how to control the rain? So all of these questions about the cosmos, about weather, about the skies, all questions. Questions which, if Job were to answer, he would have to say, I don't know, or I can't control it. An admission of human limitation. I mean, that's the issue, an admission of human limitation. The second set of questions about the animals. Animals over which, at this time in history, which means probably just after the exile, ancient Israel's exile in Babylon, questions about animals over which human beings had no control. Again, human limitation. If Job would answer those questions, he would have to say, I don't understand and I can't control them. Again, things we all want. It's good to want to understand. It's good to have some kind of control. The issue is, how do we do it? How do we go about doing it? Can we acknowledge that there are some things over which we have no control and maybe never will? That is almost un-American to talk like that. We have a sense in the West because of the great accomplishments. I'm not against accomplishments. The Holy Father's not against accomplishments. The ancient Israelites were not against accomplishments. The issue is, number one, what do you do to accomplish? And what do you do once you have accomplished? How do you use your accomplishments? So the questions then for Job, the answers again, his questions of God, the answers are, I can't understand, I can't control. So Job asks questions, Job demands questions, and Job demands answers, and God gives questions. And at the end of all of this, Job is satisfied. He has no answers. He's never given an answer. Read carefully. Job never knows why he suffered. He never knows. If you look at why he suffers, it is the Satan who said to God, you take away everything. Give him an illness and he will curse you. Which, unfortunately, and I'm not finding fault with them, some people do curse God when they are stricken. So that is not unusual. It's not the best thing to do because sometimes it's out of our hands. And that's the whole thing. For all of us, the issue, I think, in the book of Job is not that he was patient. The issue in the book of Job is, can Job accept the fact he's limited, which means there are things in the universe he can never control and never understand. Now, we're part of the universe. He's part of the universe. That means there are things in human life you cannot control and you cannot understand. Could he accept that? I always say it is a question of anthropology and cosmology. Anthropology meaning we human beings really think we can do anything and everything. Just give us enough time and enough money. Which again, that, as I said earlier, that almost sounds un-American, that we can't do things. We can eventually do things. I don't know. For sure, I'll never live to see that. So it's not, are we going to be able to? We can't, and can we live with that? Can we trust a God who is in control of everything? Job never questioned God's control, never. That was part of the problem. God could have changed this. More than that, it is in God's control to prevent it from happening. Can we trust a God who is in control? Can we trust a God who knows everything, but doesn't let us in on the secret? Doesn't let us in. And that is a conclusion that Job had to come to. I mean, in a certain sense, what God is doing is showing by experience, you are not in charge. It's easy to say you're not in charge, because in our minds we might think, just give me a chance. Now, in a certain sense, as I said before, it is experience that is the best or the only teacher. But we have to try. We have to try to accomplish. We have to try to excel. We must. I mean, that's why you go to school. That's what we want when we are in an occupation. We want more than just survival. We want fulfillment. We want happiness. Call it what you like. Everybody wants some kind of an accomplishment. We're wired for that. But accomplishment can also be a temptation, that we think we are in charge, that we are king and queen of the mountain, and we're not. Sometimes we may feel we are, but we're not. Now that's anthropology. It would be so much easier if we knew what our limits were. Easier, but not terribly interesting, not exciting. So in a certain sense, I always think we have boundless interests and boundless, desires and yearnings. That's human. But they're not fulfilled. That's also human. At least they're not fulfilled here. Now that's a religious answer. A secular society will recognize we have boundless interests and boundless yearnings and desires. Psychology will tell us this. Psychology will also tell us we will not accomplish them. And one wonders, why are we like that? Augustine has a wonderful response to that. You have made us for yourself. But actually he starts, our hearts are restless. You've made us for yourself, and we will not be fulfilled. We will not be at rest until we rest in you. There's a phrase similar to that in another biblical book, Ecclesiastes, where this is the book, Vanity of Vanities, all things are vanity. For everything there's a time. It sounds like many people think that that's a very negative book, but it's not. Again, you got to understand the context. The whole book says, as accomplished as you are, you'll never be satisfied. Never. Years ago, Peggy Lee had a song, Is That All There Is? Which also says, we're never satisfied. But the answer is we will be satisfied in God. That's a religious answer to a human yearning. And I'm not apologizing for the religious answer. I'm saying it's a religious answer. So what I said before was anthropology and cosmology. Anthropology searches for and is driven to fulfillment. And that's good. That's the way we're made. But where's the fulfillment found? That's the question. Where is fulfillment found? Where is satisfaction found? Where is true happiness found? That's the question that we all face. The book of Job would say, we recognize our human limitation, anthropology, when we see the universe and we see the magnificence of the world of which we are a part. A world over which we have no control. A world of which we have not total knowledge and understanding. Only God does. But again, I want to say, God doesn't tell us. So do we trust a God like that? That's the question for Job. That's the question for us as well.